happening us now. I'm looking forward to hearing the inspirational story of my lunch break yesterday. And this is Josh Hough, who's from Horsham, the founder and CEO of the Sussex-based home care software company CareLineLive. Now, born with a rare muscle weakening illness, Josh was in a wheelchair at an early age and was written off by many doctors. And this fueled his fire to develop digital technology and improve home care. He's created an app that joins up everything in a home care business, from patient's notes to medication details. And today, the business produces revenues of over £3.5 million. It's got over 40 members of staff, and delighted to welcome Josh onto the programme now. I mean, that's quite remarkable what you've achieved, Josh.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's been a long journey to get to where things have got to, and I think difficulty is always, you can either be challenged by them or you can accept the kind of accept what you're told. But yeah, I've always tried to sort of challenge the norm and make my own way through different problems.
So as a child, as you were growing up in a wheelchair, that sometimes could provoke some quite unpleasant behaviour towards you.
Yeah, I mean, you go through secondary school in a wheelchair, and you're always seen as not the outcast necessarily, but you're always seen as that person that's different to everybody else. And there's no necessarily polite way of putting it, but teenagers can be absolutely brutal. So it was never the most fun experience, never my favorite time, but got through that, learned a lot about life, learned a lot about different people and the way that different people act and interact, and it's allowed me to get to a point now where I've built what we've built.
And it sounds to me as some people saw the wheelchair, they didn't see the determined person that was in it. You actually overheard sometimes doctors telling your parents that you might not even have a job.
Yeah, they're obviously, medical professionals are always in a position where they're trying to manage expectations and things. And I think when you're born with a rare condition such as I was, I can't remember exactly the number of people that are diagnosed with it now, but there wasn't necessarily the awareness of how things would affect you. I think also, society's come a long way. As much as sometimes it feels like it's gone backwards, it's come a long way in the last kind of 10, 15 years. And so opportunities that wouldn't necessarily have presented themselves previously may now present themselves now to other individuals or to people in similar situations to me.
You have a rare genetic condition that's so rare most of us probably won't have heard. I'd certainly not heard of it. It's called mini-core myopathy, and you just say Correct. It was bad luck. It's just something that happens. Both parents have the gene. That meant you had a lot of treatment aside from going to school in a wheelchair, and that must have been very difficult as well. You just want to get on with life, and then back you go, another medical appointment.
Yeah, you do, and it's not necessarily just another medical appointment. Like I said, we have an absolutely fantastic NHS here in this country, but you go to one of the specialist appointments and you'd be kind of kicking around waiting for 2 or 3 hours because things are overrunning, and that's nobody's fault necessarily, but it just kind of becomes another one of those days, right? So you've got a day off school, fantastic, but actually what you're going to do, you're going to sit in, whichever London hospital it is, be it Great Ormond Street or Hammersmith or somewhere else, for a few hours before you even get seen. And then, they turn into incredibly long days while they wanted to do whatever test it was they decided that they were going to do that day.
It's interesting as well. I think a lot of people will relate, and I think this has been raised. Keir Starmer's talked about making the NHS more efficient, making sort of it more joined up, people talking to one another. But as you were waiting for these appointments, you noticed that people were filling out paperwork. They had the big, thick folders of information, and then you were filling out more forms, answering the same questions that you'd asked. Been asked and answered over and over again, and that was when a sort of idea light bulb moment appeared.
Yeah, it's a continuous kind of thing even still today. As a child, there would be people that would come in and visit in the home and turn up with this big folder, and you'd relive kind of the last 2 years of experiences or whatever. But even now, when I don't have those people coming in now, I make my own way to the appointments. But even now, when you go to those, because you're always still seen by a different person, you're still reliving, now for me, the last 32 years. And so it just kind of adds up and adds up and adds up. And so information sharing and giving people key highlights or whatever they need kind of at the touch of their fingers is crucially important, especially when we're working in a sector that's very stretched. There are, whether people like it or not, there are still 15-minute visits that go on in the home care sector. And so if you've only got 15 minutes to see somebody, you need to make sure that you've got you understand exactly what it is that you're doing at that moment in time.
All right, so you get the idea for the app, and we'll talk more in just a moment. Thank you for being our lunch break guest. We'll just have a short musical interlude, and then we'll talk about how you get the idea moment. And my guest today also saw his grandfather receiving care, the lack of communication, alongside what he'd seen as he was growing up as a child. So you get the idea for the app. How do you then develop it, implement it, and run the staff surrounding it? Sarah Gorrell with you through until 2:00 this afternoon, and my lunch break guest today is Josh Hough, who's from Horsham, the founder, the CEO of Sussex-based home care software company CareLineLive. And Josh was talking about the fact that as he was growing up, he was in a wheelchair, and he'd often hear conversations where doctors would say, he might not get a job, and if they could see him now with a business that produces revenues of over £3.5 million, has over 40 members of staff. And we heard about that light bulb moment of the idea of creating an app that links everything up, all the communication you need when you're caring for someone. Josh, even you must be surprised at how much you've managed to achieve. You've got 40 people working on your business, and it all comes about because of that idea that we heard that you had. Where do you even start when you come to implementing an idea?
It's kind of like the $1 million question, right? It's really hard to kind of articulate where you begin with these things. I mean, I was fortunate that there was here's now my director of development, Deck, and we went to college. In fact, we went to secondary school together as well. And so I was fortunate that I recognized that there was somebody far cleverer in terms of the coding aspect than me, while I was able to kind of come up with the idea and sell the product and interact with both investors and other stakeholders to make sure that we've been able to financially build where we've got to. But ultimately, it was the relationship that Dec and I had that meant that we were able to start building out into a real product. And then, of course, it's a balance between what customers are asking you for, as well as what we think as software people, or, we think as kind of the brains behind the idea, if you like, what we think we could do to improve the sector further. And that's always a tough balancing act.
So for you, actually, the thrill of being the CEO of your own company and employing people must be great. But actually, you did this because you saw the difference it could be made and what was needed, that communication that was needed, something in one place. And actually to see the impact that has, you must get feedback and hear that from people that use the product.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we started developing CareLineLive, I realized one of the things that we really needed to do was improve that communication. And to start with, the sector wasn't necessarily ready for that. But as we launched our first minimum viable product, or kind of test case, back in sort of 2018. And so when you're building that out from that point, things are obviously changing, and you realize that the holy grail is joining up, or we've kind of coined the circle of care. It's the key stakeholders. It may be people in the social services, it may be GPs, it may be family members, all having access to the same information. And the feedback that we get from that is that often actually relationships between family members and patients or service users or clients of these home care businesses are improving, because that information sharing is so much more accurate. They're not having to go to their parents' house now anymore to go and look at what's written in that kind of book of care visit records, and now they can see that within sort of seconds of the carer leaving that property. So it improves a lot of that. And yeah, I think holistically, adds a lot to the service.
In terms of those early days where you have to take a chance, you have to take out loans, credit cards, all the rest of it. There must have been, it's a big leap of faith, isn't it?
It's a massive leap of faith, and people say to me, would you recommend being an entrepreneur to somebody? And the instant reaction to that is no. But then when you think about it and you look at the life that you've been able to build around that, and well, I mean, I don't necessarily have a work-life balance, but the life that you've been able to build around it, and the satisfaction that you see on people, and you go in the office and you think that I've built this is phenomenal, and it does kind of do fantastic things to your kind of motivation. But there's still, you go home at night and you can never switch off. You're always worried about what the next bit is or whatever. So it's absolutely a double-edged sword.
And it sounds like one of those apps that will develop as well, and that will get further people involved in using. What are your plans for the future?
Look, we'll never stop developing CareLineLive, and obviously it's difficult in a public forum to kind of articulate or spill the beans on all of the ideas that we've got. But ultimately for us, it's about continuing to join up those workforces even more. We've done a lot between joining up family members, and things like GP Connect are built in the system now as well. So we've done a lot on the patient side. And I think for us, the next kind of the next journey, along with our expansion internationally, we'll look at our joining up and making things more cohesive for the actual carers, and giving them a better interface, and giving them more ability to manage some of their own diaries effectively.
And you also, you recognise that people have challenges when they're in the workplace. So obviously you had lots of medical appointments, and people have sometimes accused you of being too lenient with your own staff, because your philosophy is, if you need the time off to go to an appointment, then take it.
Yeah, I absolutely believe in that, because if you're going to create an environment where people are able to succeed, then it's important that they're able to look after the one thing that's most important to them, and that you can ultimately never replace, which is your health. And so I think it would be wrong of me to go to appointments myself and then expect others to take that time back. Now, obviously, I kind of work over the hours that other people would work, but still the impression of that is not great. And I want to support people that otherwise may struggle in situations like that.
What does your afternoon look like then, after you've done this interview as the CEO of a company?
So I've got a couple of meetings scheduled this afternoon with some of our investors, and just keeping them kind of informed of where we are. And then it's looking at strategy of where we're going. As I said, with kind of the work that we're doing internationally at the moment, there's a lot going on, but between sort of like product development and feature development to sit around some of those key features. So yeah, a lot goes on, and will continue to go on for as late as I allow it to in the evening.
And that's the thing, isn't it? If you're running your own business, you can't really. It must be really difficult to switch off.
It's almost impossible to switch off. Even when you're on holiday, you've still got your phone on you. It still pings. You try and have two phones, a work phone and a personal phone, but inevitably you've still got your work emails on your personal phone, and so it never ends. But that's kind of the thrill of it. Is waiting for that next really exciting point to come in, waiting for that next large contract to come in, and waiting to see that next review come in on the internet that says, you're doing a really good job and you're building a great product.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really good to talk to you. That's Josh Hough, who is the founder, the CEO of the Sussex-based home care software company, CareLineLive. And you can find more details about them. They are online, CareLineLive.com, if you would like to find out more details. They help care agencies improve efficiency and productivity, and improves communication between all those that are involved of the care of a patient.